You are listening to the AMODA'S podcast. In this series, Amoda explores her essential teaching through conversation and excerpts from interviews and events. To find out more about events and to sign up for her newsletter, go to www.amoda'S.com. Please subscribe, comment and share if this podcast moves you. And if you feel called to donate, please go to the website. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy. Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another conversation with AMODA'S. Good afternoon, Amoda.
Good afternoon, Kavi.
So today, we're going to have a conversation about knowledge and knowing. The title of this podcast is tentatively called Freedom Beyond Knowledge. So hopefully what we're going to try and shed some light on in a way is the difference between knowledge and direct knowing. Is there a difference? What is that difference? How does that difference manifest? Etc., etc. I think you'll understand when we dive into this juicy subject and try and untangle it at least a little bit. I'm going to start, Amoda, with a quote, excuse me, that we found from Krishnamurti. That kind of describes a little bit of what we're going to untangle. So, Krishnamurti said, "Words can only take you so far. What lies beyond cannot be put into words." So I know that, in this teaching, there's always this talk of what does living from the unknown mean? You speak about this a lot. And that comes up, and that's going to come up in this conversation. So what place does knowledge have? And what does it mean to go beyond, to use that word? Obviously, we're in the territory, we've now dived into the territory of words. Words, knowledge, the unknown. And so everything in this conversation is going to be kind of loaded in a way with these kind of references. But let's just dive into it. And see if you've got enough there to begin the conversation.
What was your question, Kavi? Please.
Well, the question was, is spiritual knowledge, for instance, I'll throw another one, is spiritual knowledge helpful on the spiritual path towards self-realization? What place does knowledge have, and what does it mean to go beyond knowledge?
Mm. Mm. Spiritual knowledge, in other words, ideologies, philosophies, scriptures, spiritual texts, both classic texts and modern day texts, of course, are very valuable and may set us off on our journey, and inspire us and ignite the yearning for a deeper truth or a deeper knowing. So yes, all is valuable. Everything in our lives is valuable. Yeah, wherever we find ourselves, some people find themselves on a spiritual path, maybe Buddhism or Advaita or some tantric approach. Or even mindfulness, it could be, many paths, or Zen. And all of this, of course, is valuable. What perhaps we can cut to the main point, which is that knowledge and true knowing, the knowing of truth or self-knowing, are fundamentally two different paradigms. So even the word self-realization or self-knowing or knowing thy true self, knowing true nature, implies that knowledge is involved, that if we get it intellectually, if we understand it intellectually, conceptually, or follow a particular ideology, that we'll get there. So we need to highlight the difference between knowledge and knowing. Yeah. At some point, knowledge doesn't take us there. What happens with knowledge is that the self, the persona, the personality, the personhood, believes that knowledge, that understanding, that information, that ideology that usually has various concepts, that mean something. The personhood creates a belief that the more they understand it, the more they have a map of it, the more they progress on the path to this step and this knowledge, and that they're going to get there. To the holy grail of true self-realization, liberation. And that becomes an impediment. Freedom can be known even if you've never read a book. Freedom is known in a whole different way. Of course, it can be a support. And again, very valuable.
Is that a sorry to jump in? Is that like a trick of the mind? Is that a what is that? The idea, or that comes from the self, that the more I accrue, or if I get that bit of information, because this is what we're talking about, the intellect, in a sense, the mind intellect that says to us as consciousness, if I get this extra bit of information, it's a trick of the mind.
Well, I don't know if it's a trick of the mind. I don't think there's anyone here trying to pull the wool over our eyes. But it is, if you like, a reflection or a manifestation of a particular a specific state or paradigm, which is the one that we live in, most of humanity lives in what we call the dream state, identification with the personhood, identification with mind, and thoughts, identification with belief systems, ideologies, which are usually inherited, religious, social, cultural. It's an identity, we could call it identity with the ego self. And when that is the paradigm through which we live and operate, you can't see beyond it. And yet you're seeking, as a spiritual seeker, you're seeking that which is beyond. So it's a kind of trick, if you like. It's a kind of a bit of a mirage, so we call it.
Mirage, yes. Yeah.
So, and the ego self, the ego identity, which is the personhood, is always accumulating something in order to add to itself, to feel better about itself. So whether that's knowledge, whether that's good feelings, whether that's possessions, whether that's anything that makes it feel elevated in some way, or more complete, or more fulfilled. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of those things in themselves. Whether it's knowledge, information, acquisitions, possessions, whatever it is. Friendships, so on. Those in themselves are innocent. We can enjoy all of that. It's the identification, and the unconscious accumulation of that, which means I'm becoming a better person. I'm becoming a happier person. I'm becoming a more spiritual person. And that's what's the impediment. That's what the if you like, goldfish bowl is. It's a goldfish bowl, and we can't see beyond it. And yet we're seeking that which is beyond it. We're seeking the ocean.
Yeah, this the irony in philosophy and spiritual philosophy, isn't it? Really, it's the very thing that it seems to be being sought is that which is beyond belief. But the more knowledge that kind of comes in seems to have a tendency to consolidate the very beliefs that we're trying to get beyond.
That's right. That's right. So, yes.
and so if we take that as being, possible truth, if you like, what does it mean? How does philosophy, or what's written on the page, or the knowledge, as we're calling it, how does it move, if you like, from being a read experience to becoming a lived experience? What's that?
I think to speak to that question, all I can say really is that there are written words, that are free as much as possible, because no word is totally free and no word is the truth. But there are written material, shall we say, and spoken material that points to the true knowing, which we'll explore what that is.
Yes, of course.
Without being entrapped, without the words or the written material being entrapped or enmeshed or drawn from ideology. In other words, not having a cultural ideology, a religious ideology that has been passed down over eons, perhaps, and in that passing down becomes ossified. I'll use the examples, and we take this with a pinch of salt in some way, because all teachings point to the same truth. But when we get very caught up in, let's say, Buddhist teachings or even Advaitic teachings, any teachings that have a body of knowledge that has been passed down and passed down and passed down and repeated, and also uses a very specific language, if you like, and also has a map, a kind of map of the spiritual path. That's while it points to the true knowing, because of the goldfish bowl syndrome, it can become a veil of perception. So to highlight the difference, there are writings, written texts that are written not from that are direct, written by those who have discovered that freedom for themselves, without any reference to any ideology or belief system or cultural or religious or philosophical sort of foundation. And those words are, or that written material or spoken material is then more able to point to the true knowing, because it's free from that conceptual inherited language. So in that sense, words are useful.
So there's the metaphor, if you like, of the map. Is that what essentially what you're saying is that the Buddhist teachings, for instance, or even the fresh, fragrant words of the direct path, if you like, that you're talking about, still only point. They offer a fragrance, or they point directly to a process or a process that one must follow this map, and then. Because actually, I'm only really interested in the conversation of, and then, what happens, not for the one who's written the words or the map writers, but really essentially for the one who's followed the words, because the words are good, words are powerful. We've developed an extraordinary articulation of the inner world through the words that we use and have developed over thousands of years. And then what? Once you get, if the words take you somewhere, let's say, and I know this, I remember all of this for myself in my spiritual, early days of confusion. Then what? They only take you so far. Then for the seeker, then what?
Well, then for the true seeker, there must be a sort of, you could call it a turning within, where the true longing to know freedom or true nature is paramount. It's of more value than all the spiritual knowledge and understanding on that level, or following any particular map or path. Yeah, the true longing to know true nature for oneself, unadulterated, must become paramount. It comes forward when all the spiritual knowledge that has been gained and all the practices and all the understandings and it has to be like this, and we see this so many times. No, that's not enlightenment, that is. And then there's this whole description of it, or samadhi's not it, it's the other, it's something else, and this becomes so conceptual, and it's only from knowledge, because the one who says that doesn't actually know. It's what's been read, it's what's been absorbed, and they think they know, but it's not truly known for themselves. To know true freedom doesn't come from that kind of knowledge. So when that becomes more important, when all the accumulation of that knowledge, all that understanding, all that conceptualization, however high, however even beautiful it is, doesn't serve true freedom, doesn't serve the end of inner division, doesn't end suffering in oneself. When that's seen, then a different question arises, which can be supported through dialogue, through inquiry, through even written material and spoken material, of course. But there's a different kind of listening that happens. Yeah. And it's then a direct discovery. Yeah. Yeah. Which is a whole, unfolding in itself. Yeah. But it has to arise from within when we see that the accumulation that we carry with us, the spiritual baggage, if you like, that we carry with us, the spiritual shopping bag, yeah?
Oh, yes, we're back to that.
that we carry with us has actually come to naught. It may have brought us a long way, yes? But at some point, it's come to naught, because still there is not true freedom. Yeah. Still there is not true self-knowledge, which gives rise to freedom, yeah? And that has to be a genuine inquiry in oneself, or a genuine turning point. And then we can start to ask a different question, yeah? Which comes in many forms, but we ask of ourselves, what is more true than belief? What is more true than understanding? What is more true? What is my direct experience now? Yeah, that opens up the door to a personal truth that we may have not been in touch with, yeah? And it brings us deeper and deeper into an impersonal truth, which is the truth of my essential nature.
Sorry, yeah. Do you think in that way then, because what we've already are approaching is the conversation about living from the unknown and being able to embrace the unknown, but actually go to that place, because it's like in fact, it reminds me of of that phrase: if you see Buddha on the side of the road, kill him, because that's what that's referring to. In some ways, it's like I need to go on the journey alone now.
I don't know if that means alone.
No, I know it means it to me.
Well, yes, it does, and no, it doesn't. I don't think it means, well, that's it. I'm never reading a book again, or I'm never receiving any spiritual pointers again. Or maybe it does mean that. And sometimes we have to go on that journey, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, because then we throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, no, of course.
Living from the unknown means that we listen from silence. That's all it means, really.
But yeah.
And yet that changes everything. Yeah.
What I was actually, using that to say is that as soon as you start asking the different question, stuff comes up from the inside. Yeah. And generally, in my experience now, a lot of people on the path are actually, without realizing it, trying to use the knowledge secretly, covertly, to avoid the pain of the past. And so it becomes that's where the knowledge becomes convenient, because you read truth and it resonates. Yeah, you read wisdom, it resonates. And there's a lot of wisdom out there, historically and in the present culture. So you read it and it resonates, and it's like, wow, I get it, I've got it. And it becomes an addiction in a way. Honestly, it becomes an addiction to that, to the resonating with the truth that's been heard or read, or spiritual teachers are the same thing. Quite honestly, you go from teacher to teacher hearing the truth, and it's great, it's fantastic, but it doesn't actually get to the underneath place that you're talking about, because you can't actually live from the silence that you're talking about unless you go through something. Something has to be gone through. And that's where the juicy stuff is. That's not about throwing anything away or taking anything with you, but it is being willing to go inside and face oneself, if you like. And that's part of the inner knowing. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Because there are layers. Yeah, we can't bypass and jump straight to the knowing of the absolute. Yes, it can be glimpsed, but still there will be layers of, if you like, preconditioned mechanisms that create internal suffering, that have played themselves out throughout this whole lifetime, and who knows how long in the collective as well. And unless those are seen and met, which is the opposite of bypassing, because it brings up, our habitual strategies for avoidance, for resistance, for suppression, or for grasping. Unless we see that and meet that, which is on, if you like, on the level of the personal truth. What am I giving my allegiance to in this moment, in this relationship, in this interaction, in this belief, in this reaction? Yeah. And then we go on that journey, and then we can discover what is more true than our attempt to avoid pain or to bypass or whatever it is. And yes, so the problem with getting it on the level of absolute truth is that, yes, it can become a sort of band-aid, a cover-up. I got it. I understand it, because like you say, we do on the deepest. That's why we resonate with truth, with wisdom, with spiritual truth. Yeah. And then that becomes a cover up, and still the avoidance goes on. And then we can either deny that there's suffering here because we've got it, and then we create an enlightened or awakened persona, which eventually probably comes undone in some ways, gets challenged, or we're confused. Why is there still, if I'm honest, there's still suffering here. Yeah, I'm still seeking something, and yet I know this truth. So there is a sort of coming together of that, the personal and the impersonal. But that's exactly what we're speaking of. And it's at this point that we cannot enter that doorway. Yeah, when it opens, we cannot enter it with knowledge. We enter it from not knowing. Yeah. But the honest, raw experience of what is. Yeah. And then, a whole bunch of inquiry happens there, which takes us deeper, perhaps, and so on.
Yeah, this is why, without wishing to blow my own trumpet, I love poetry, because poetry has a like I steeped in the poetry of Rumi, which contains both the fragrance of the flowers in the garden, but also points to the essential nature of the garden itself. So it was very mystical. That's why I do like the mystics in that sense, the mystical poets, because they sort of convey something without appealing to that part of the mind, which is very Western, with not exclusively. But kind of gets hold of knowledge and then starts rigorously kind of going on that path of intellectual knowledge. Whereas the beauty of poetry is it sort of touches something, and it can't quite say what it touches, and so it sort of gets inside the mainframe, because that's ultimately what the aim is, isn't it? To get inside the kind of mainframe, to use matrix-like language. So something starts to stir. Stir, because it does. It is a journey. It's a very different journey. When we meet a lot of people, I've met a lot of people who have got lots of spiritual knowledge. There's no doubt about it. And their knowing on that level is greater than mine. I don't know. But then there it is. There's the point that you're making.
Absolutely. And I've been met with sometimes reactions, usually not in the personal realm, but in the, let's call it the social media realm, where those that do have knowledge have said, oh, she doesn't know, and then thrown a whole load of spiritual concepts, drawn from a particular path, and then comparing it to what I've said. But the proof of the pudding, if you like, is that they're not free. Yeah, they might have vast knowledge, but they're not free. And I speak from the honesty and humility of true freedom. And so that's spoken from the unknown, in the sense that I'm not grasping for any esoteric, metaphysical, or path-orientated, knowledge-based ideologies. I don't come from that. So it's the language, the words are from direct experience, describing or pointing in at least the most accurate way that comes to that knowing of freedom, to that realization or state, if you like. It's not a state, but paradigm. It's a new paradigm, new way of being. And I remember when I first started speaking in public, having done a little bit of speaking prior to that in various different modalities, and always having prepared my notes and, and so on, or at least in my head, having prepared my notes and had a list of bullet points and so on. And I had to throw all that away.
Yeah.
I waited. I just waited. I waited in the not knowing for years, so that didn't creep in again, because it's a tendency to feel safe, to give some kind of platform. And I remember the time came very specifically where this little voice, it wasn't even a voice, it was just a feeling, a sense from the inside said, just go, sit in silence and wait and speak from that. And I'm like, what am I going to speak about? What am I speaking about? Now, obviously, I wasn't speaking about how to repair your car or something. So obviously, I'm speaking about the nature of freedom. But there was nothing here. And that was so raw and so naked, and just became the way it is. And it really felt like the words just popped out, and it was like falling into the unknown, or falling from the unknown. And of course that has now become so normal and comfortable and so on, so that there is a kind of ease and flow with that. But I remember that very much in the early days. And if ever I tried to cling to anything, sometimes, I'll be like, okay, so I want to talk about this and I'm going to go in this direction. It just didn't feel right.
See, this relates actually to the last podcast that we did a little bit with David Elsey, because we were bordering and touching on this very thing, because I also have my own experience as a musician with actually the very, very same thing, just in a musical context, because it's the same. When you just can see, you learn a load of guitars, you learn a load of guitar riffs, you learn where the notes are, you get habitual about what's doing. And then suddenly I come to a AMODA'S experience, and the demand is drop it, without pretending that you've dropped it, without any pseudoness, but deeply within oneself, to have that sincerity to actually be able to be naked. What arises here? And it was, for me, it was a path of fire. It really was, for a while, because I had to keep on allowing myself to just go where it was pulled. But never mind about that. I remember the process for you, not process, but I remember you doing that, because I was there when you used to prepare stuff in the back in the old days. And for you to do this, to actually, knowing the history of you was extraordinary. Like, wow, that's guts. There's a sort of bravery of not the self, the bravery of putting the self down. It's extraordinary, man.
Sure. And of course, if you're teaching or speaking about something,
yes, of course,
a modality, a method, a practice, and it can be spiritual or not spiritual. It can be about something else altogether.
Fixing the car,
it could be something mechanical or pragmatic, or building your business, or whatever it might be. Then of course you can prepare in that way. But even then, at some point, you have to let go of it. And a truly powerful, if you like, or speaker in any realm will actually, obviously they have there's something that it flows into, some like music you've learned a skill, and so on. It'll flow through that, and if you don't have that skill, it's not going to flow at all. But there's also a complete dropping of it, and a spontaneity, and not having anything to really rest on. So it applies to all fields, and in this case even more, because it was really there was no methodology here at all to fall back into. So that's called speaking from silence, and then you can point to that silence.
Well, so it would be, it's the authentic kind of way, is to speak from the unknown and from silence, pointing to the unknown, to silence, but it still has to come up, if you like, through the form, through the articulation, actually through the self, very self, through all of the perceptive layers pointing back down to that which can't be described and the utter silence of things. So it's quite a fancy kind of game, if you like, and it's treacherous in a sense, because it's one thing for the teacher or the communicator to know, to be honest, to be true to where that is. But then it comes up and is received and perceived through the filters of the many layers of the other. And that gets tricky.
For sure.
So,
sure, yes.
So just just talk about this. Talk about silence.
Well, silence. I mean, that can be a literal silence. Yeah, we can just be together, and yeah, very often that's part of a group, a spiritual group, or interaction, or a one-to-one where we can just be together. And often for somebody who's not used to that silence, a discomfort will come up, and we just rest with that. Yeah, we just rest with the silence, even though discomfort may come up. So there's that kind of silence. And then we are also individuated, localized entities, human beings, per mind, body, vehicles. And we do have the faculty of language to communicate and connect and describe and create and so on. And so when we dialogue through direct inquiry, through question answer, then we can either speak from knowledge, from I know, and I'm going to impose that belief system on you, or we can speak from inner silence, which, yes, it has a knowing in it, the deeper knowing, but essentially, and this is also just in relationship, we can, it doesn't have to be spiritual teacher and student, but also in any relationship or interaction, when we communicate with another or meet another from inner silence, we are not coming with the baggage at the forefront of my beliefs, my opinions, my narratives, my stories, my shoulds and shouldn'ts, and that inner battle, because it's a battle of duality, polarity, right, wrongness, righteousness. I'm not coming with self-righteousness to convince you, to seduce you, to barter with you, to beg with you, to overpower you, to please you. It's naked. Whether that's in an intimate relationship, whether that's with a passing stranger, or whether that's in a student teacher relationship, whatever we want to call it. That's silence. Of course, we speak, we communicate, we share, we point, we describe. We're really meeting each other in beingness, and words arise out of that beingness. They're not filtered through opinion. Now, of course, if it's let's put it, a student-teacher relationship, then the teacher has, if you like, the authority to point, if there is a blind spot or an untruth, to point and reflect from that deepest knowing. But that's not the same as opinion or self-righteousness. And we can sense that in the vibrational field. Makes a big difference.
I think people can sense that in the vibrational field. It's easy to hoodwink as well, but it can be sensed, because the idea of the spiritual teacher, that they sort of slow down and develop a kind of hypnoticness about themselves, and that can be convincing as well, because everybody's seeking reassurance in some kind of way. And so, there's a requirement of discernment, if you like, on the path of the student or the seeker. So yes, but then once you do know, there is a knowing. That's why people are drawn to what I've noticed is in your case that when you're, as over the years, you've got kind of quieter and quieter. And I don't mean your voice has got quieter, but the stillness and the silence from which you teach, if you like, has come more and more and more to the foreground, if you like, or the fragrance of it has risen more and more. And that does something. That changes by osmosis. It's almost like it relaxes something in people. I think I'm just referring to you actually. I don't know about other teachers, but with you, there's a relaxation that happens for people because it's very mindy, and we're in a very mindy world, obviously, aren't we? So,
yes, and I think that's what I'm referring to. We meet from beingness, from inner silence, and then it's not just a to and fro of sharing information or, my information's better and my way's better and you should do this and so on. We're not feeding the mind. We're not feeding the acquisitive self. And of course, sometimes people ask from that acquisitive self and it's difficult to reach into the deeper layers. And so then there is a kind of patience. Yeah, perhaps we just
you are very
respond to
patient.
that.
I notice.
I allow that. You can't just say, "Well, you're wrong. You're speaking from your acquisitive self." you just can't. That's not valuable. So you allow an unconditionality until something starts to relax in the other.
You tend to allow that to unravel, if you like, of its own accord. Would you say?
I think it does. Yes. If the other is truly available and they're ripe, there's a ripeness happening, then all their acquisitive questions will come to naught, and then they'll start listening from a different place, or they'll go away and never come back again. And they'll go seeking somewhere else. That's not my business. So there's a ripeness that takes place, but the only way to be with that is to just allow, at least, to a certain level. And then perhaps there's another level of trust and you can reflect back a little more, a little more clearly. But I think that unconditionality does serve something. And I would say the same in intimate relationship. Yeah. So we don't battle in opinion. Yeah. We just be with each other, and what you think and what you feel is your business, and everything's allowed, and everything will unfold beautifully, and the same vice versa. And that's
I don't know how you put up with my shenanigans for so many years. This is the same kind of approach, really, I guess, that
it's exactly the same.
I eventually unraveled, didn't I? Eventually.
It did, yes.
It's true. It's true.
Yes. I mean, let's just, on a personal level, I never found you particularly opinionated by any means. So I don't think we had to battle or wait for that. But, subtle realms, we just listen to each other. We just be with each other and let each other be. And something
is that as an oblique question, is that particular, not that you would know necessarily, is that particular to you? Have you just stumbled on that kind of, it's not a method, but is that way of being with seekers or students and stuff? Because that's not necessarily always the way. You get your wrathful teacher who doesn't operate necessarily like that, or is this part of the new way, or?
I can't really speak on behalf of other teachers. I think there are others who are in this way, if you like, but also not. So I don't know. For me, this is both natural and also what arises out of the end of silence, out of the end of inner division, out of the end of knowledge, out of the end of opinion, out of the end of narrative. It's just natural.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been in fact, I've never been an opinionated person. I've never had strong opinions or forceful ideas or tried to convince anyone of anything. That's just not my way. But I also did not know true freedom. So my persona would come in, my personhood, my emotionality, my defense structure.
Oh, yeah, the reactive.
Some reactive, some defendedness because of feeling self-conscious and so on. And now that none of that is there. It's pretty empty. It's empty. It's space. So I meet people in space, not space out there, but a spaciousness, stillness, sometimes with a passing stranger, let's say, or whatever. That space wants to be filled in by them, because that's their default. And I don't really have anything to fill in. Yeah. And that means that we might not have anything to say to each other. Well, the discomfort's in them. If there is discomfort, the discomfort's not in me. Or maybe there is something, but
This is quite extraordinary in some ways to consider, that your own devotion is to the truth of the silence beyond any knowledge and beyond any self. I don't mean yourself, I mean all self, yeah? And so when met with the possibility of picking up the dukes and battling it out or anything, you now, this is what I see all the time, you stay in that kind of empty space. And it's not particularly spiritual, it's not anything, it's just natural way of being. And so all of the other stuff falls to, or has the potential to fall into that emptiness, and thereby to dissolve into the emptiness, or to be met with its own resistance, if you like.
Yes. I mean, I don't do this on, it's not like I'm consciously doing this.
No, I know. That's why I'm interested in talking about it. We never get to talk about it.
No, what's it called? My litmus test, if you like, is the gym, because it's the only place that I go other than to buy provisions, but then I don't need to speak with anyone really. But the gym is the only place that I go that is a social context, let's say, a class. It's not really a gym, it's a class. So on the few occasions that I do go, I really see the conventional paradigm. I'm faced with it, and that's the litmus test, because most people, and a couple of individuals in particular, who you walk in, and as soon as you walk in, they're either having that conversation with somebody else or they're trying to have that conversation with me, and it's all opinion based. And it's about this happened and that happened on a world stage or on the political stage or on that. And it's all opinion. And then the interactions are all, yes, it's like this. And yes, they shouldn't have said that. And it just doesn't go anywhere in me. So there's absolutely nothing to say. Now, neither am I retracting from it. I'm just there, but I see it played out. It's amazing. Or it's something else, what I did last night and this and this. And that's fine. That's part of the human chit chat. But it actually doesn't go anywhere. It just gets totally absorbed in silence. And even if I think, why are they saying that? Why are they so vociferous in that? There's nothing in me that responds to it. There isn't anything, because it seems like a lie. It's a lie created for the self to stand on and feel special or secure or strong or this or that or for or against. It just doesn't go anywhere.
So you don't meet it with any resistance, because it's quite a difficult juxtaposition, but you don't meet it with resistance. This is what I've noticed about you. And because you're able to metabolize it, to digest it fully, metabolize it, so it flows through. Because the secret knowledge that we don't understand is part of our purpose is to metabolize the world. Yeah.
Yes.
And that means that if the closer we get to the silence within, the more capable, and peace within, and stillness within, the more capable we are of digesting and metabolizing other stuff, the stuff of the world, the stuff of other people, nothing to do with opinion, way, way beyond that. And then it flows through without getting stuck.
That's right. And that transforms the darkness or the conflict of division into the light of beingness.
Yeah.
And that just happens organically, naturally. So we become the light of the world. Now, somebody else might not see that, know it, and it doesn't matter. But this is almost like how we serve the world, not through some pious, moral, philosophical, spiritual standpoint, but it just happens organically. Yeah. And if something relevant or pragmatic needs to be spoken, then it is. It's not like we ignore everybody. You might say something polite, goodbye, good afternoon, yes, have a nice day, whatever it might be. So there is still a human interaction, but it's kind of almost minimal. It's not buying into that. So that's my litmus test.
I would say also that there's the judgment, because judgment is a huge factor in the human experience. That's what we're steeped in: judgment based on knowledge, based on beliefs, based on the consolidated self. And so there's no judgment. But even if there were a tiny judgment right on the surface, it would be so far up on the surface that it doesn't do anything. It doesn't go anywhere. There's no activity from it. There's no actionable action taken, because it's not a perfect place. It's a very natural place that you're talking of.
Sometimes there can be irritation.
Yeah.
There's a ripple, a loud voice, a loud opinion in that spaciousness could be irritating. Yeah. But it's, like you say, it's just a ripple on the surface. There's no activity from that. Yeah. There's no lingering thought activity or emotion activity or action activity. So it's a ripple. Yeah. That's it. That's it.
Well, Krishnamurti said, words can only take you so far. What lies beyond cannot be put into words.
Yes. Yes. To know true freedom, you go to the edge where mind can no longer go. And mind means any strategy of either avoidance or trying, which is grasping. Mind cannot go there. Yeah, you can't carry the past there. You can't jump into the future there. It cannot go. Mind cannot go there. Often, maybe we just finish on this. I do speak, and I have spoken, and I point to it in my teaching because it comes up about the void of being, the abyss of being where true freedom lies. And so often I hear people who experience that, they come up to that seeming edge. They want to explore it, or they're afraid of it. Why is there this fear? And then I hear this phrase, if only I had the courage to take that leap. And I'm like, no, you don't need to take the leap, because that's carrying your mind with you. The mind is doing it. Yeah, when I say mind, I mean the self construct. Yeah, you're taking yourself with you, trying to do the letting go into the abyss, and that's not what happens. That's not the invitation. The invitation is to hang out at that edge, where mind or self-construct has no job, no value. It's the end of that. And that is the deepest surrender. Not the surrender to the abyss, but the surrender of self-construct activity to nothingness, to not knowing. Yeah.
Yes.
And at that point, we stop because nothing else can describe it.
Exactly. Very beautiful. And so, in effect, that is the purpose of knowledge, and the purpose of words, and the purpose of this podcast, and the purpose of everything is to facilitate taking one to that edge, and then.
That's right.
And then it's up to the individual, ultimately.
In some ways, yeah. We could say that grace takes over at that point. Grace and ripeness, availability and willingness to just hang out there, not knowing. And that's a death to the self-construct. You die into the eternal infinite now. So no more to say about that, because then that starts to become something that somebody wants to do.
Well, yes, because there's the next question is always, how do I do that?
How do I do that?
Which we're not going to answer that. That's for sure.
Right
so
now.
Just as a before we actually close this, I would just in a moment of encouragement, actually, for people. When I was 17, I was 16, 17, I was introduced to given a copy of the Dhammapada, the Buddhist, wonderful book. And I was given that by somebody who thought I needed to read it. She was an elder, and I read it and I didn't understand one word. Nothing. Years and years and years later, I ended up at, I think it was John de Ruyter, actually, of all people, speaking in London somewhere. And I went along, and I was not on the path, because there was no path for me then. But I went along to John de Ruyter, and I didn't understand a word that he was talking about. He had a very interesting.
He didn't have many words, did he?
He looked savagely at me at one point, but then I realized I was just perceiving the savageness. So, who is this? And so it went on to many kind of, a few satsangs and stuff. I wasn't a big satsang person, and I never ever really understood, because I didn't even know what I was supposed to be understanding or anything. And then all these years later, all of that was beautiful. All of that was welcome. All of that was beautiful, because it did everything that goes in, as long as it doesn't just stay somewhere. Yeah, it allows the drip, drip, drip into the ocean. Yeah, because I was a sincere. The one thing about me is sincerity. Yeah, and it's half of it was just allowing all of that to go in. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't care that I didn't know what it meant. That was the thing. So slowly, it dug up the garden and de-weeded it. So I always say take heart, but just allow it to go beyond knowledge. Allow it.
Beautiful.
Okay. AMODA, I think we're finished.
Yes, we are for today.
For today. We will be back. And thank you so much for your wisdom and time. And thank you very much, everybody, for listening. And we hope to see you again quite soon. Be well out there. Take care. And over and out from the AMODA podcast.